around the country, and even those who've governed valiantly have become the fulcrum of discontent, and it's understandable discontent. That comes with the territory. So, you know, there is an added burden on these governors. I think many of them will be reelected because they've governed responsibly, but it's certainly a political reality.
Another item on your agenda this year has been global warming, cap and trade. There's a sense on Capitol Hill that the exhaustion at the moment with the economic crisis and with the healthcare debate makes that simply a non-starter. Is it a non-starter to you, or do you think that's still an item on the active agenda for 2010? Well,
let's first talk about the issue of energy, Jerry, because I think that can't be a non-starter for the United States of America. Right now, what you see are is China just full throttle, full speed ahead and trying to command the clean energy economy of the future. India moving in that direction. These are, and this is going to be an important part of the economic mix in the future. We have to compete for those jobs in that future, and so we can't just walk off the field when it comes to energy. And the president spoke about that in his State of the Union in terms of specifically of that aspect of it, the cap and trade aspect of it. There are efforts ongoing in the United States Senate between Republicans and Democrats to come up with an overall energy bill that would help drive this clean energy investment and clean energy economy. If a consensus can be reached, we want to support that. But this is clearly an issue that Republicans and Democrats are going to have to do together. It's not something that one party or the other party can do.
As long as we're ticking off unfinished items on the agenda, financial regulatory reform, it looked until the last couple of days as if that might be an area of actual bipartisan action in Congress. In the Senate, Republicans and Democrats on the Banking Committee were working together, but that seems to have broken down now. Is that another item that's either not going to be passed or is going to have to be passed with Democrat votes only?
Well, we'll see. I think there's a real sense of urgency about that. Nobody wants to be placed in the same situation we were. Again, no American taxpayer should be in the position they were during this last crisis to have to bail financial institutions out because of their own irresponsibility. And though we've managed that well and gotten most of the money back, it's a source of irritation to people. One of the things we ought to do, by the way, is we ought to pass the president's proposal for a fee on the largest banks to help make the American taxpayer completely whole for the support they gave these firms in their time of need. In terms of financial reform, there's been an enormous lobbying campaign going on, and you know, I'm afraid that some on the Hill are yielding to that lobbying campaign. Just last week, the leader of the Republican Party in the House met with one of the leading bankers in the country and said to him, we're the ones who are standing between you and financial reform, and you ought to support us. So if the Republican Party makes a decision that they can turn this into a fundraising device, then it's going to become more difficult. But I think the American people are not going to accept that. I don't think the American people are going to feel good about that. So I'm hoping that they'll take a second look at that and say this is one of those problems that we all have to work together to solve.
When did you at the White House decide to start taking a tougher line with Republicans, as you've just described? This was really a shift in tone that began around the State of the Union, a little before the State of the Union. Why did you decide to do this?
Well, look, we're dealing with the reality of trying to govern in a very difficult time, and it became apparent because of this sort of habitual use of the filibuster, because every appointment was being put on hold and so on, that political mischief was making it difficult to solve the problems of the country, and we really felt that we had to penetrate that in order to move forward. And we would be more than happy to work together with people from both parties to solve problems, and that's what we're trying to encourage. But what we can't do is be governing while the other party is simply running a campaign, an election campaign. I don't think the country can afford that right now, but we're going to shine a bright light on that, and we're going to give every opportunity for cooperation. But where cooperation isn't forthcoming, not as a matter of principle, but as a matter of politics, then we're going to we're going to make a point of it because the American people need to know.
As you know, though, in 2008, it was a referendum on the Bush administration. It was also a change election. So does this approach affect your thinking of the 2010 elections, making it an election of choice rather than a referendum on the last 2 years of the
Well, there's no question. I mean, anytime candidates appear on the ballot, it's a choice. And we're, you know, I'm very eager for that discussion. The President has worked very hard to pull the country out of this deep hole that we found it in, and made some very courageous decisions to do that, and has also thought long about what we need to do to strengthen the country in the long term. The most serious education reform in the history of the country, I believe. Obviously health insurance reform was part of that. Trying to create this clean energy economy is part of that. He's trying to solve problems. And all we've really heard from the other side, by and large, was let's just go back to doing what we were doing before. Let's go back to letting lobbyists and special interests dominate the agenda in Washington. Let's stick with the status quo. The status quo has been tested and it's been proven faulty, and we can't go back to that.
We have time for a quick follow-up from each of you.
Just one quick question about the 2010 elections. You're a practitioner of campaign science. You've run campaigns. This is going to be the first campaign run in the wake of a Supreme Court decision that said, essentially, corporations can advertise directly in favor of or against candidates. What do you think is going to be the practical impact of that this year and this midterm election? Well,
look, there are the implications for governing and also for the elections. What my concern is now that any lobbyist for any industry can go into any member of Congress and say, if you don't vote our way, we're going to run $1 million of ads in your district. This is disputed, but I don't think it's really disputable. Foreign-owned entities, through their American affiliates, can participate in our elections in that way. It is an unbelievably unwholesome thing, but it can be meaningful. If you have big entities running multi-million-dollar campaigns to try and influence who goes to Congress, that is a big concern. That's certainly going to increase the power of special interests. That's why Congress ought to step in and do something about it.
I have a question for you about the mood inside the White House. For some of you, this is going on year 4 since the beginning of the campaign that you've been working nonstop. When do you think we're going to start seeing some turnover at the White House? This year? Next year?
I don't know. Everybody's very committed to this country and very committed to this president, so no one is eager to go. And I'm sure there'll be some turnover. There always is some turnover, but we all have the same sense, which is this is a very critical time for our country. We're challenged in so many different ways, and we have to overcome the politics of this town and help this president solve some problems and move this country forward. We all want to be a part of that. So no one's clamoring to get out. It's been a long, hard road, but a very rewarding one, fulfilling one.
We should not let you escape without noting that the president stuck his neck out a little bit and said he kind of liked the Saints in the Super Bowl. What about you? Saints, Colts?
Well, I think that my sentimental choice would be the Saints. I think it'd be great for New Orleans, but I admire the precision with which the Colts execute. So my heart says Saints and my head says Colts.
Well spun.
Finally, for you personally, what's been the biggest challenge that you have faced, and maybe something that surprised you serving as senior advisor for the last 14 months to this president?
Well, the greatest challenge personally has just been being separated from my family. That's been very difficult. My wife and my children remain in Chicago. I don't see them as much as I'd like. But professionally and in terms of this pursuit, I think the greatest challenge is this very tough kind of tension between having to get things done within the system as it exists, and also trying to change the system as it exists. And that's a very hard problem to solve. And in terms of what surprised me, I guess, you know, John F. Kennedy once said, I think, and I paraphrase, what surprised him the most was that things were worse than he actually said when he was campaigning. I guess what I would say is that what surprises me is that everything I've said about Washington for 30 years turns out to be true. But I still remain confident that we can improve that and we can change that. I know the president's committed to that and that we can really pull together here and solve some problems.
David Axelrod with Jerry Seib of the Wall Street Journal and Ann Kornblut of the Washington Post. We thank you for joining us. We invite you back anytime here on C-SPAN.
Thank you.
Thank you.